Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans in their Week 5 matchup, played October 8th, 2015, as these two AFC South division rivals went at it on Thursday Night Football. We're going to go over every score in the final moments of the game as well, and we're going to go over the stats. We're going to give our breakdown and analysis. So let's get started off in the first quarter. With about 6.5 minutes still left in the first, Vinatieri had a 48-yard field goal that put the first points on the scoreboard, as it was now Indianapolis 3, Houston 0. Then with a minute and a half still left in the first, Matt Hasselbeck hit Andre Johnson for a 4-yard touchdown. Vinatieri added the extra point, and it was 10-0 Colts over the Texans, as the 41-year-old got the start over Andrew Luck, who's still injured, and Matt Hasselbeck actually was playing with the flu. So it was 10-0 after one quarter of play. Then with a little over 7.5 minutes left in the second quarter, Vinatieri had a 42-yard field goal, his second field goal of the game, and it was now 13-0 Colts over the Texans. Then with just over 2 minutes left before halftime, Nick Novak put the Texans on the scoreboard with a 36-yard field goal to make it a 10-point game, with the score Indianapolis 13, Houston 3. Novak having just joined the team recently as they got rid of Randy Bullock. And so then, and the final play of the first half, as crazy as it seems, especially with them getting that field goal with just over 2 minutes, they were able to force the Colts to punt, go 3 and out. They used their 3 timeouts they still had at that point, and so they got the ball back. And Hoyer, who is in the game now, Mallet had gotten the start, but he had got a little banged up, and so then Hoyer came in. Mallet had been 7 for 10, but Hoyer was doing so good that they kept him in. And so at this point, though, Hoyer threw a 42-yard Hail Mary, and Jalen Strong, the rookie from Cal, he brought it down, and he scored the touchdown in the end zone. And with the extra point by Novak, it was now a 3-point game. So quite the crazy play on the final play. They just throw up a prayer, and Jalen Strong pulls it down. And it was a 3-point game with the score Indianapolis 13, Houston 10, going into the locker rooms at halftime. So now coming out of the locker rooms after intermission, less than 2 minutes into the second half, Frank Gore punched it in from 3 yards out, as it took them less than 2 minutes to score on their first possession for the Colts. Vinatieri added the extra point, and now it was a 10-point lead once again for Indianapolis with the score Colts 20, Texans 10. But then with about 4 minutes still left in the third, Hoyer finds Jalen Strong for an 11-yard touchdown, and with the extra point by Novak, it was back to a 3-point game, now with the score Indianapolis 20, Houston 17. So that was the score after 3 quarters of play. Then in the fourth quarter, about 4.5 minutes into the fourth quarter, with 10.5 left to play in regulation, Matt Hasselbeck finds Andre Johnson for the second time in this game for a touchdown, and it was now 27-17 with the extra point by Vinatieri, as the Colts pushed their lead back to 10. Then with about 6 minutes still left to play in the fourth, Nick Novak hit a 49-yard field goal, and it was now a 7-point game with the score Colts 27, Texans 20. So now it's a 7-point game at this point, and the Colts would get the ball. They would be forced to punt the ball, and so now the Texans would take over. So the Texans take over down by 7 with a little over 3 minutes left to play. Hoyer then finds Foster for a 12-yard reception, and that brought the ball from the Houston 42 to the Indianapolis 46. So they brought the ball across midfield. Now with still over 3 minutes left to play, Hoyer then found Mumphrey, as they actually had a couple injuries on the receiving end, as Nate Washington and Cecil Shorts both did not play in this game, as they're both injured for the Texans. So Mumphrey with a 5-yard reception. Now it's 2nd and 5 from the Indianapolis 41. Hoyer hits Foster. He picks up 3 yards, and that brings us to the 2-minute warning. So now coming out of the 2-minute warning, it was 3rd and 2 on the Indianapolis 38, and Hoyer, under pressure, throws an interception. He's intercepted by Adams, And so they turned the ball over, and now the Colts would get the ball, but Houston still had all 3 timeouts, and there's about a little less than 2 minutes left to play. A minute 45. They give it to Gore. He picks up a yard. They know he's running, so they stop him, and they burn their first timeout. Now it's 2nd and 9 from the Indianapolis 17. They give it back to Gore. He picks up 3 yards, and Houston burns their second timeout. So now the Texans have 1 timeout left. It's 3rd and 6 on the Indianapolis 20. They need a stop right here to get the ball back. And instead of running it, even though they needed to have the clock move, the Colts decide to pass, and Matt Hasselbeck hits T.Y. Hilton for a 43-yard reception. Houston burned their final timeout, even though at this point it didn't matter, because all that was left to do for the Colts was for Hasselbeck to line them up in the victory formation and take 3 knees as the Colts hold on to win this one 27-20 over their division rivals, the Texans. The Colts are now 3-2 as they remain in first place in the AFC South. They're 2-1 on the road. Houston now 1-4, last place in the South, 1-2 at home this season. Now, I'll tell you, the Texans in this game were very undisciplined. They looked pretty soft. They couldn't even beat a 41-year-old sick man. This Hasselbeck, not only is he 41, he's also was sick. He wasn't even 100%. Where is this Houston defense? I mean, I thought J.J. Watt's the best player, right? But how come Houston's defense sucks? At one point, before they forced that punt after the field goal, at that point in the game, late in the fourth quarter, the Colts had scored on 5 of 7 possessions. Of course, they had the punt there, so that made it 5 of 8. And if you count that final possession, then it's 5 of 9. But they're still scoring like every other possession against a defense that's supposed to be good. And I mean, they've got the talent. They've got J.J. Watt. They've got Vince Wilfork. They've got Clowney. They've got Merciless. But they really don't have much of a secondary. That's where a lot of their issues are. But, you know, they weren't really getting after the quarterback, though. I mean, J.J. Watt seemed to just kind of disappear. Give credit to the Colts offensive line. You know, he did get a couple, pressures, and Clowney was getting in the backfield some. Early on in the game, he looked good. But, I mean, Hasselbeck was just picking him apart. Let's look at his line. Hasselbeck, not big numbers, but he protected the ball, which is more than you can say for either of the Houston quarterbacks. Of course, both their turnovers was kind of fluky, especially Mallet's bounced off Arian Foster's hands, so it wasn't really his fault, the interception that Mallet had. Hoyer's interception late in the game was just, you wonder why would you just throw the ball up in the middle of the field? No one's open, nowhere to throw it. Yeah, I mean, I understand the game's coming to a close and the pressure's on, but you got to throw it away down the sideline at least. You can't just throw it up in the middle of the field hoping maybe somebody comes down with it. Yeah, somebody did. It was Mike Adams. But Hasselbeck, 18 for 29, 213 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions for the Colts. Ryan Mallet started off 7 of 10, 50 yards, 1 interception. Like I said, it wasn't really his fault, that interception. It was in Arian Foster's hands and then just bounced up. And so it wasn't really a matter of Mallet who had screwed up on that play. It was really more Foster. But Hoyer, he actually had a heck of a game up until that interception at the end. 24 for 31, 312 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and then that late interception that really sealed the deal. They still had a chance. That's the thing is, people are going to blame Hoyer. They're going to dump on Hoyer. But it's not Hoyer. It was the defense. And the offensive line is the thing, too. Because the Colts, they were the ones getting pressure. The Colts were after the quarterback. They're in the backfield bringing the pressure. The Colts, actually, their defense is finally starting to, look good. The same thing kind of happened last year with the Colts, too. Their defense started off not really being on the same page, it seemed. But as the season progressed, they started to put together some performances. And in this game, I thought they did a pretty good job of filling their lanes. I thought they did a pretty good job of shutting down Foster, at least on the ground, although Foster had over 100 total yards. But we look at the running Frank Gore, 22 carries for 98 yards and a touchdown. One of his best games, definitely his best game of the season. And then Foster, as they said, 19 carries for 41 yards. He also had 9 receptions for 77 yards. So he had 118 total yards in the game. Pretty decent overall. Like I said, a lot of that's out of the backfield. And even with the 77 receiving yards, one of the catches he didn't make ended up going the other way. And that was right there down by the red zone at that point. At least that's where he was when it bounced off his hands. And when the defender came down with it, that ended up being, he was caught about the 10-yard line. Of course, that was Adams, who also had the other pick. Is Mike Adams, he's a ball hawk. You put the ball in his vicinity, he will come down with it. Alfred Blue had 6 carries for 22 yards in the game. He also had 1 reception for 11 yards, giving him 33 total yards. And for receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, I knew he was going to have a big game too. With no Cecil Shorts and without Nate Washington, you knew the majority of the targets were going to go to Hopkins. And he had 11 receptions, 169 yards, but he didn't get in the end zone. Of course, Jalen Strong had the 2 touchdowns, 2 receptions. Both of his receptions were touchdowns. 43 total yards, the 42 on that Hail Mary. And then another 11 on his other touchdown reception. But Foster was actually the second leading receiver for the Texans. Again, a lot of that's to do with Shorts and Washington not being available for the game. But for the Colts, T.Y. Hilton, 5 receptions for 88 yards. Of course, 43 of those yards were on that final catch of the game before they lined up in the victory formation and took the 3 knees. But it was a big catch. It was a very clutch catch. And that catch really sealed the victory for the Colts. If they had to give it back to the Texans, who knows what happens. But Andre Johnson looked really good in this game. 6 receptions, 77 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Andre Johnson against his former team. And he was looking like his former self in this game. He finally had some production as a Colt. So Gore and Johnson coming up big in this game, the new Colts. And then we look at the kicking. Of course, Adam Vinatieri, he's a Hall of Famer, definitely, in my opinion. And I don't see how he doesn't go in first ballot. But he was 2 for 2 on the field goals, 3 for 3 on the extra points. Nick Novak was perfect as well, 2 for 2 on the field goals, 2 for 2 on the extra points. And look at the defense. I said the Colts defense, man, unsung heroes. DeQuell Jackson, 8 tackles. Toller had 8 tackles. Lowry, 6 tackles. Mike Adams with the 2 interceptions. Walden had a sack. I believe it was Walden who also got that QB hit that ended up with the interception by Hoyer there at the end, near the end of the game anyway, on their last possession for the Texans. And for the Texans, I said they didn't really do much on defense. I mean, McKinney had 6 tackles, but they didn't get any picks. They didn't get any sacks. They were whack. I say they're so overrated, the Houston Texans defense. Even I am guilty of overrating them. And I really have to wonder, what is the issue? Why are they so soft? Why are they so undisciplined? Well, that goes back to the coach. And we'll get to that in a minute, but when we talk about the penalties, you'll see what I'm talking about when I'm saying about how undisciplined they were. But first, some of the first downs. They actually had more first downs. So they had 24 to 22 for the Colts. And on third downs as well, they were looking sharp. They were 8 for 16 on third downs, 50% for the Texans. The Colts just 3 for 11, only 27% converted on third downs. Both teams went for it once on fourth down, as they both had 100% on fourth down conversions. Total net yards, 444 for Texas, 323 for Indianapolis. Net rushing yards, 110 for the Colts, 82 for the Texans. And that's something right there for the Texans if they needed it to be the other way around. And it's actually a thing where you would think these numbers would be reversed, that it would be the Texans that were moving the ball on the ground, and that it would be the Colts moving the ball through the air. Of course, no Andrew Luck. But net passing yards, 362 for the Texans, as they let up 1 sack. Just 213 for the Colts. Of course, Hasselbeck, is the backup quarterback, but he's 41 years old, and he's also has the flu. So, he was sick. But we look at the penalties. This is really what made the difference in this game was the penalties. 13 penalties for the Texans for a total of 125 penalty yards. That means they gave the Colts 125 yards. And it always seemed to come at the worst time. It seemed like all the penalties for Houston would come in a way that would either extend the Colts' drive, like on a third down, or it would come whenever they made a big play, like they would lose a touchdown or they'd lose a first down, they would get put back, like they would get pushed out of field goal range, like they just kept shooting themselves in the foot all game long with those penalties, and of course the 2 turnovers as well, the only turnovers in this game, those 2 interceptions, one by Mallet, one by Hoyer. As I said, the one by Mallet, it bounced off of Foster's hands, but then we look at the penalties for the Colts, just half as many, just 7, 65 penalty yards, which is nothing to sneeze at. It's kind of a decent amount of penalties, but nothing too outrageous. Usually, though, there's some games where that would be the most penalties, but 13 penalties for the Texans. You get 13 penalties, 125 penalty yards, you're not going to win the game. Like, if you do, that's like a miracle. It's crazy that they were even that close in the game. They said a lot of it was more that the Texans lost this game more than the Colts won it. I mean, give the Colts credit, especially their offensive line and their defensive line as well. I thought the Colts, in the trenches, they were just better. And especially against a very formidable defensive line for Houston. I mean, like I said, you got J.J. Watt up there, you got Wolford up there, you even got Clowney coming in off the corner. And they were holding those guys pretty good. Not holding them, but, keeping them away from Hasselbeck. Like I said, Clowney was getting some pressure early on, but kind of disappeared as the game, went on into the second half and into the fourth quarter. Whereas the Colts, they just kept getting better, and they were doing a really good job of plugging the lanes and everything. They were shutting down Foster early on. Foster started to get something going on the ground, but it seemed like as soon as he got something going, then he just would get out of gas. And they got so many running backs there in Houston too, with Polk and with Blue. That seems to be the thing with Houston, is they just don't have a lot of consistency. You got 2 quarterbacks, you got 3 running backs, they're missing 2 of their receivers. Where's the consistency? That's the thing. That's how you win in the NFL. And so the Colts, they didn't have their quarterback, but they played pretty consistent. Frank Gore is doing a heck of a job on the ground, especially against that defense, especially against those big guys up front. And, of course, Andre Johnson turning back the hands of time, Hasselbeck as well, and Gore for that matter, too. We look at the red zone, and here's another big difference in this game is the red zone. The Colts, 3 for 4, 75% converted. Texans, just 1 for 3. So you go to the red zone 3 times, only come away once, it's 33%, and that's also a recipe for disaster on their end, even though they had the time of possession, 32 minutes and 27 seconds versus 27 minutes and 33 seconds for Indianapolis. So a huge win for the Colts, especially Andrew Luck didn't start the game for the second straight week. And the thing about that, Luck has yet to play his best football of this season. He hasn't really done much. And he will when he gets back. And they're already pretty much have secured the division. I mean, yes, it's just 3-2. But you look at that AFC South and who's going to challenge them, who's going to come up and be a challenge. The Texans at 1-4 already lost this one at home. Of course, the Colts own the Texans historically. And, maybe Tennessee, when Jacksonville is playing, pretty good ball, but they also, they're not really getting those W's. But the Colts, even the way they've been playing, they find ways to win. And that's what good teams do. Even when they're struggling to find their identity, they're still finding ways to win. Because winners win, losers lose. And that's the thing you see with the Colts, is that they have that winning mentality. They have that culture of winning. They said they are pretty dominant in that South division and have been for a while, and especially over the Houston Texans. And no matter what, even against the backup quarterback, Houston still can't get it done, even at home against the Colts. So the Colts just own the Texans. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you had a good day and had a good week, and have a good weekend, and enjoy all the sports.